gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. I think I can make it now. The pain is gone. All of the bad feelings have disappeared. Here is that rainbow I've been praying for. It's gonna be a bright, 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 sunshiny day. Look all around, there's nothing but blue sky. Look straight ahead, nothing but blue I can see clearly now. The rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that had me blind. It's gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. It's gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. Gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. Oh, what a bright, bright, sunshiny day.
Nagara girunge, girunge. Oyo, oyo, oyo. Na, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's the new calypso, no summertime fling. Rocking to the rhythm and the style we are bring. Energy electric, I step in at the ring. Chipping and a chipping with a pretty little thing. And I know that it's gonna be my day. Spreading love and it's gonna go my way. Middle of the road and if you do a thing when the vibes start popping out, popping out, popping out. Yeah, feel it when the sun comes out, even when it brings down. Don't miss the magic. So blessed to have it. Oh, feel it when the sun comes out, even when it brings down. Don't miss the magic. No, so blessed to have it. I just wanna feel free tonight. Let it all go. No need to hide. Energy, yo, we ain't coming down. And everybody wanna, I'll give you mine. Vibes right up from the way your body wine. Can't get enough. Can you feel it now? When it beating in your soul, yeah. Go ahead and let the world know, yeah. From night until morning, them already know that them want it. See me out, going my way. Spreading love and it's gonna be my day. It's a whole set of gal in the street party. Now the whole thing popping out, popping out, popping out. Yeah. Feel it when the sun comes out, even when it brings down. Don't miss the magic, no. So blessed, so blessed. Yeah. She just wanna have some fun, and I just wanna get down. Don't miss the magic, no, no. So blessed, it's the new calypso. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We got the magic, believe in the magic, yeah. We're needing this magic. Oh, yeah. Agikidungno, lagadagidungno. Oh, yeah. Na, na, na. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, hey, oh. Feel it when the sun comes out, even when it brings down. Don't miss the magic, no. So blessed to have it. Oh, she just wanna have some fun, and I just wanna get down. Don't miss the magic. So blessed, so blessed. It's that new calypso. Yeah, she's shaking up the hips, how she shaking up the hips, yeah. See me out going my way, spreading love, and it's gonna be my day, my day. Oh, oh. Sweet, 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 sweet calypso. We got the magic. Oh, yeah.
All right, everyone. I think we're all in the mood. Are we all, everyone I know is in different time zones. Are we all feeling lively, ready for our spicy hot seat session of the day? How are we feeling? You guys can raise your hands up. If you want, let's go. Isha, if you could stop sharing, let's see how are we feeling today? A high, low, what's the mood like? Yeah, it's high. Okay, especially after that, it got us in the mood, I think. Awesome. So as people start trickling in, getting their little notifications that the event is started, I'm going to have our lovely Isha start us off. All right.
Sure, Joy. Hello, everyone, and a very good morning, afternoon, evening. I am Isha from Gleek, and I have Joy and Iza who are hosting this event along with me today. And introducing, drum roll, we have Funke, who is our new mentor community lead, and who's going to, of course, make sure that all our lovely mentors are happy and engaged all the time. Funke, you can just say hi, whatever.
Thank you for the warm welcome, Isha. And it is a pleasure to meet all of you here today. And we look forward to such an insightful webinar today. Thank you.
Awesome. So quickly, I'll just explain the agenda of this event. We're going to have a hot seat coaching session with our three prestigious coaches, Maxine, Dr. Preeti, and David. These three coaches are going to answer the questions that you entered in your registration forms for the event. So get ready to get answers for those tricky, spicy questions and situations. Once we're done with the panel discussion, we're going to put you in breakout rooms for you to solve a tricky situation or a spicy question. Once you're back from the breakout rooms, you're going to get awesome feedbacks from our incredible coaches. Quickly about our amazing coaches today. First one is Maxine. Maxine is a corporate trainer, a former HR executive, international speaker, OD consultant, coach, and comes with more than 10 years of experience as a director of Maxine Barnett and Associates. And now she's also founder of Soft Skill Services, which is dedicated to helping leaders at all levels and hone their soft and power skills to achieve their personal and leadership and business goals. So welcome Maxine here. Second up, we have Dr. Preeti, who is a medico turned into internationally awarded management professional. With more than a decade of experience with NTPC Limited, she is in the top 50 influential persons in Oman. And she is also a proficient orator, moderator, panelist, has a strong presence in the area of learning and development and communication. She frequently writes columns in national newspapers and media platforms in Oman. So welcoming Dr. Preeti. And last up, we have David Rigby. David is founder and director of Smart Coaching and Training. He's a trainer. He is a career and executive life coach. He is also an international keynote speaker. He comes up with more than 25 years of experience, specializing in diversity, psychological safety, preference profiling, career, life coaching, leadership, change, and a lot more. So I welcome all three amazing coaches here and hand over this to Izzat to continue with our hot seat panel discussion.
All right. Thank you so much, Isha, for that super warm, energetic welcome. I am so excited to get started with everyone. So before we get right into the questions for the hot seat panel, I just want to give you guys an overview of what we're actually thinking about doing. So in this session, we're basically going to have 15 minutes of a rapid Q&A from our mentors who haven't seen these questions before. We hope to catch them off guard enough so that we can get their honest, juicy, surprising answers and get a diversity of perspectives on some of the questions we have. Now, these questions come from our audience, so we really hope that this is something that's engaging and rewarding, fun for you. And if we have time at the end, we might open the floor up to questions to the rest of the audience. But for now, I want to jump right in and start with our first question, which is for Maxine. So Maxine, here's your scenario. You are in love with your boss, and recently your relationship hasn't been in a good place. Because of that, your work is also suffering. What do you do in such a situation? Now, I sincerely hope that you haven't had to navigate such a situation, but what would you do hypothetically if you were in such a place?
Workplace romances, my goodness. Let me start off by saying that workplace romances, some say office romances, many of them do not end well, because a workplace romance does not only affect the two persons who are involved, it affects the entire department. I have seen where that has happened and the entire department becomes a toxic place. It becomes paralyzed, where work doesn't get done, and where the situation is, the one that I have seen, and this is many years ago as a young professional, I entered a department where that was going on, where the supervisor and the director, so the people at the top, and when they are not speaking, everything stops. People are moving around eggshells, so it doesn't really work well. What happens to that person? The director is not going anywhere. So the director is the boss. That person is not going anywhere. So what we advise is that the person try to see whether or not they can get a transfer to go elsewhere, because they have to think beyond themselves and they have to think of the department. I know of some organizations also that actually have a policy about that, where something like that happens, where one has to move. One either moves in a different department or a different location, policy-wise. So that at the end of the day, my advice is it's not a smart thing, and you can be the loser because the boss is not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective, Maxine. Sort of on that note, I have my next question for David, which is, how do you leave work problems at work and not bring them home? And this comes from the fact that a lot of employees are overstressed, and whatever they're thinking about at work, they often take it inside their houses. What are your thoughts, David?
The most important thing you can do is commute. So you're actually in a different place when you're working than when you're at home. And if you're working from home, the best thing you can do is do your work day and go out for a walk and come back in again, and preferably from a different entrance. So it's a different place you're in, and that's what's really crucial. I find doing trivial things, like just before this session, because I get sometimes nervous about these things, I wash the floor. It's a completely different thing to do, nothing to do with this, nothing to do with work. And it just gets me out of worrying about it because I'm focusing on something else, which is mundane. In reality, you should organize your life so that you work in normal hours. I mean, I work in normal hours, but they're my normal hours, and they tend to be not in the day, they tend to be in the evening and the weekends, because that suits me. But I know when to stop. I know I have to get out and do something else, otherwise my focus and concentration goes. So what's really important is about remembering this is the end of work. I'm doing something else now, and make sure you do something else that's not too taxing when you first get in. Like making the dinner, Maxine, making breakfast in your case, and seeing what happens next. But certainly split them off, and don't look at your emails when you go to bed, and don't look at them when you get up in the morning either. You do home stuff when you're at home, and then switch your head. You might be at home, but you're in work mode. That's when you start on the emails and everything else. And when you finish, turn your computer off. And if you use it for leisure, turn it off, do something else, turn it on, and don't look again. Anything to do with work. That's my advice.
That's excellent advice, David. And I love this idea of sort of compartmentalizing our life, not just by the space, but also by the activity that we're doing to influence how we're feeling mentally. I really like that. My third question is for Dr. Preeti. And my question is, how do you handle ungrateful people in business? Do you think is being emotional over money a wrong choice at work?
Okay, so as I think I got two questions here in one, right? So
Yes.
quite grateful for that ungrateful kind of a part. So coming to the first part of the question, how to deal with ungrateful people at work or at business. So I would say that given the kind of people's person I am myself, I would first give them a benefit of doubt, because most of the times we are not aware of the challenges that the other person might be facing. Could be some emotional issue, could be some financial issue, maybe something happening at their end. So because everyone's learned behavior is something which has happened over the years of life experience, which are different for each one of us. Secondly, before jumping on to conclusions and all, I would like to request a conversation or a communication. Try and establish a communication with that person. And it will be ideal to engage with that person with statements which are not exactly leading, which are not exactly provoking kind of questions, but not putting them under the blame game umbrella, but with some sensible conversation by which we can really find out what's exactly going on. And there's no point because eventually there's no point if this thing all keeps on building inside you, and you end up getting frustrated in the end, and you'll have your health issues later. And it's better that you control and you do not explode up and regret something which you shouldn't have done later. So when I say communication, I think it has to be two-way. It has to be more of listening and less of speaking. Also, I would say that there is another possibility that what you're observing in the other person could be a reflection of your own behavior. This is something I feel somewhere deep within, because at times when we notice something fishy or something wrong, maybe something or somebody or some hint out in the universe is trying to show you the mirror as well. So you may be, it could be your own lack of gratitude, or somebody's good behavior gives you a hint that you also are. I mean, just a possibility. We cannot really rule it out. Lastly, if that pattern is happening with that person, it's a pattern. If it's getting too much, then you have the full right of saying no next time, because your time and energy and efforts are precious as well. And coming to the second part, that money thing, right? Is it good to be emotional about money or not? Yes, eventually we work for money only. But again, as I said, the root cause has to be found out. I would say that there's a lot of fears associated with money. That commodity is so important. Everything revolves around that. So there is a fear of loss of money. Then there is a guilt around you, either if you are earning it deservingly or not, or you're cheated upon someone to get that much of money, or there is shame in not having enough money, and also greater likelihood that there is envy that the other person has loads of money. So these kind of fears and emotions do revolve around money. So being aware of these emotions is important, and I think that it's okay to have such emotions, and that's what keeps us going also. The mixture is there, but yes, awareness is important, because our rational thinking and our the decision making eventually is quite revolve around our awareness of the things, basically. So that's all. Thank you.
No, thank you, Dr. Preeti. I really, really like that response. And I really appreciate how you're bringing in so many different perspectives of evaluating the situation rather than just thinking it's A or B. And I also appreciate this introspection of what are my emotions and my thoughts that are coming into this picture. So I really appreciate that. At this point, I want to open the floor to the audience for any questions that they might have. Maybe we can take like 1 or 3 questions. So if you have anything at all that you want to ask our coaches, please raise your hand and put your question in chat. And we'll then filter through your question and then share it with our coaches. If there's anything at all about anything we've talked, anything new, please feel free to put it in chat.
You can also ask the question out loud if you'd like.
Yeah, please.
Anyone have any burning questions? This is your chance. This is some good, solid advice coming from some fabulous people. So if you have a question, ask away. All right, so it seems we got some crickets. All right, Iz, I think you can carry on with some of the questions that were submitted.
All right, great. So going back to the questions, one question I have for you again, Maxine, is how do you deal with an employee who is brilliant at their work, but they're not a culture fit for the company?
Okay. So we can approach that from 2 different angles. You may have the person who is not a culture fit because of a recruitment error. They may not have done the work up front and use some of the Gleek benchmarks to find out the person's level of soft skills, etc. So there was a recruitment error. When we recognize that there's a recruitment error, during that first few months, that probationary period, we need to address that almost right away. So because the longer we take to address that, the more problems we have. And we may even need to get legal advice as to how to address it, to nip it in the bud and separate. Because really and truly, you can, if you move the person from one department to another, all you're doing is moving the problem around. So if it's a recruitment error, address it right away and separate, but separate with proper legal advice. The other one, which becomes a little more complicated, which we may even have today, is where the organization is changing. The organization is changing in this environment. We're looking for a more agile environment. We're going in different direction. And that person who is a valued employee cannot make the change. Either is unable to make the change because of fear of technology, or we've always done it this way and I'm not changing. But that person now becomes a misfit because the organization has become a different kind of organization. That one may need to be handled a little differently, a little more with, for want of a little more sensitive, so that you may want to help the person and do all that you can do, whether through coaching or training or whatever, to help the person adapt or change. And if that is not successful, then you need to really have that real conversation about how to separate and maybe even help the person in terms of outplacement to find somewhere else. You may even want to invite the person to resign as opposed to sever, as opposed to fire, but you do it in such a way that the person is outplaced in a way that they were outplaced with their dignity and so on, but recognizing that they can no longer function in this new environment. So you can have 2 different kinds of culture fits. culture misfits. Yes.
Thank you so much for your perspective, Maxine. I think it's super important to sort of go back to the process of recruitment, but also evaluate internally, is this person just not a good person here in this department? I think those questions are very valuable. So I have a next question, which is from our audience, and I'm going to open it to anyone. And I would appreciate it if Dr. Preeti, you could take it, but David and Maxine, you're very welcome to jump in as well. And the question is basically from Jane Saul Patterson. What advice would you give someone who is continuously applying for job offers in a country that they're new to? They have their credentials on paper, they're getting interviews, but they're not getting a job offer. Any initial thoughts, Dr. Preeti?
So yes, I would not be able to answer this for country specific thing, but yes, I can always share my experience that first of all, if you're talking about the credentials on paper, is the paper going in right? Is the paper that we are producing, which is called as a resume, is it producing the right thing? Is it the right fit for the organization's demand? Is it something that, you're putting an XYZ information on that paper and they're looking for ABC? Firstly, because that resume is your advertisement, right? So you have to sell yourself accordingly. Because getting an interview offer might be an easier job, but then cracking that job is an altogether different ballgame, I believe. So check that paper, what you're talking about, credentials on the paper. So you need to check that paper again, whether that is going in right. And then yes, maybe if it is not working out, you got to discuss it up with people with probably who are there in the industry, or who are there already. You can always take their opinion and just check it out whether what is going wrong. Is your content is missing in the interview? Is your presentation missing? It's a lack of conviction, or your credentials altogether is missing when you're presenting. So yes, taking some viewpoints from other people as well who are belonging to the originally the industry there or part of the organization already, probably they'll be able to throw some light on this. So, yeah, this is what I feel. Anybody is free to add in if want. David or Maxine?
I want to add to this. Hi, Jane. I haven't spoken to Jane for about 10 years, so it's nice to have her here. My view is this. It's going to be something to do with the fitting of the culture, of what the culture you're bringing in versus the culture, A, of the country you are in, and B, the culture of the organization you're applying for. So my impression will be you're doing something wrong in the interview, which would suggest a lack of sensitivity to something in the culture of the place you are in for that interview. And it could be to do with the organization, or it could be to do with the country you're actually in. But it's significant that you move country. And what works in one doesn't work in another, as I've learned several times. And the advice is go study the culture, get the reports from Gert Hofstede on what the country's like. Go and do more research about the organization. You're going to have to change who you are if you want to get the job. You can't say, hello, it's me, give me a job. It doesn't work. You have to really understand the way to behave in the organization you're actually talking to.
I really appreciate that response, David, this go-getter energy. I would love to hear your thoughts, Maxine, but because of time, we're going to move on for now. But we'd love to hear from you after breakouts. And Pradeep and Asma, great questions in chat. The coaches are also going to get back to you after we come back from this breakout session. So, all right. Now that we are done with our hot seat question panel, I have something really exciting in store for you, which is that we're going to send all of you into breakout rooms and work on a scenario together in a collaborative challenge. So we want you to come up with a creative team name. And in this team, we want you to solve the challenge or the scenario, which I'm going to read out in just a second. You'll have 7 minutes. And once you're back to the main room, your team leader, your self-assigned team leader, will get a chance to present on your behalf for just 1 minute on the clock. Then the coaches are going to offer you feedback. Now remember, this is about you and this is about allowing you to have fun. And with that being said, here's a scenario for you. Your HR and finance person are cooking the company cookbooks, and you have a doubt that they're doing personal stuff using company expenses. You don't have access to the finance department details. Do you report this or keep it to yourself? How would you investigate or deal with this scenario? This is what you're solving for. Now I'm gonna go over to Joy and ask her if we are ready with the breakout rooms. So on your signal, Joy, are we ready with the breakout rooms?
We have our lovely Isha working on breakout rooms today, but I will, before everyone goes out, to ensure you all have the question, because I know it's a long question, I'm going to drop a link of what was just shared, so you all have it. All right. And Isha, you can also cue us if we're ready to go into breakout rooms.
Yes, we are ready to go.
Okay, I'm just going to quickly copy the question for you all, so you all have it on chat and you can see it and you're not wondering what it is. Just give me a second, lovelies. All right. Question is on chat. You can take a little quick screen grab, copy it, make notes. I'm excited to hear what you have to say. Is everyone ready to go? Yes, thumbs up.
Awesome. Opening the rooms in a second. There you go. Hello, welcome back.
Great.
Everyone here.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I hope that was a fun session. We are so excited to hear your presentations, and we know we threw you onto the spot, but we're positive that you came up with some great ideas. So why don't we go ahead and get started? I'm going to call out one of the members / the room number, and we want you to put your leader on the spot to do a presentation. So let's start with room number 1, which was Shireen's room. Can we please have the team leader present, and you can tell us your team's name?
Oh, we didn't come up with a team name, but our team leader is Gulleen. So Gulleen will now share.
All right.
Hey everyone, it was a really tricky situation. We have a solution. Just a minute, I'm just fixing my mic. Okay. All right, so first, we would want to test our assumption. So when I say that, okay, there is something fishy going on in HR or finance department, how am I assuming? Where is that assumption coming from? What data do I have? What support do I have? So that is one problem. So I need to first validate why am I assuming this? So one way of validation is to be a little more open-minded and see what is happening in the company. If other people also feel that, okay, there's something fishy going on, or if there is a pattern, then there might be something fishy going on. So one is identify pattern. Second, I think Shireen had this brilliant idea. She said, we can be the subject. We first have to identify what is the policy behind it. And if I give my personal bills to the company and if they reimburse it to me and I get the money, then that means there is a loophole in the policy. Nobody's really checking it, right? So if that is happening, then there probably policy is not well defined. So we probably want to redefine the policy. So that is one way. And I think thirdly, we will not take any decision because that will be a premature decision. So we will not report it. And we will not even keep it to ourselves and just ignore it totally, but we'll be more open-minded. But having said that, we'll not be toxic. We'll not distrust people because otherwise it doesn't make sense, right? It becomes really bitter and skeptical. Nobody wants to work with skeptical people. So I think this is what we had decided.
That is an amazing response, Gurleen. I am super on board. Great work to your team. But David will have some better thoughts on this. So David, I'm super curious, how did Team 1 do?
What they said was very interesting, but fundamentally, The thing you've not discussed is what outcomes you want to achieve. You've got lots of process in there and the kind of things you might want to do, but unless you know what your outcomes are, do you want these guys fired? Do you want to bribe them? What do you want to do? That's the kind of stuff you need to start from, because that will affect your strategy on how you approach all the detailed stuff you've got. And certainly sharing stuff is very useful, but be very careful about spreading rumors, because that's a different thing. But certainly focus on the outcomes, and then your actions will follow from that. And that's what you need to focus on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further points?
Shireen and Ankita, feel free to add anything if you want.
All the stuff you're doing is good, but certainly you really need to look at your long-term stuff rather than your short-term stuff, and that's what's crucial in this.
Yeah, yeah.
And make sure it's not you get fired.
Yeah, one of the things we said was, that ultimately our aim is to get our deliverables and make sure work happens, and it's not at the cost of getting animosity in the team and making sure that, our work is disrupted. So we need to be careful of what our priorities are. And as you said, yes, we didn't look at it in terms of are we going to, fire them or what are we bribe them. We didn't go into that side of it, but more look at how can we make sure that first we need to just address the issue that it's not just a feeling or something that I'm thinking about, but prove that there is something wrong before we can think of taking an action. And that would be ideally a policy decision, which will need to be put in place.
I would still disagree and say outcomes first.
Okay.
And that dictates what you do. But what you're saying you should do is great. But it's the outcomes first.
All right. Thank you so much, team. Thank you so much, David. We would love for you to let this be a start of a conversation and continue this on. I think there's some great perspectives. But for the interest of time, we're going to move on to the next group. So the next group is room number 2, and Cavell was in that team. So Cavell, we'd love to know who else was on your team, what your team name is, and we would love for you to present your ideas to Maxine.
Hi, Cavell.
Hi, Maxine. Well, I started off in group 5 and then I was shifted into group 2. So I did have initially Liana, and then I ended up with Ritu, if I'm pronouncing it, if I'm pronouncing her name properly, right? And we didn't quite come up with a name for our team, but we did have dialogue, and I'm trying to remember the name of the other person as well. So
Khushbu was the name.
Right.
Yeah.
So my apologies. So we did have discussions that is very similar to group 1 in terms of looking at it from a policy perspective, looking at it in terms of outcomes, and even in Rutu's, in her contributions, the outcomes perspective was important to her, especially knowing that we didn't want to malign anyone without proper evidence. But I did, in our discussion, there was a focus on whether what is our role in the organization as well, too, because that will dictate how we treat with it as well. For me, being a practitioner of HR and knowing our corporate values and what we stand for, if it's rooted with some level of evidence that would have led to a suspicion, or we overheard something because the question didn't give us much details to work with. So it's either we came across something, we overheard something that would lead to this suspicion, then we channeled it through the reporting lines that is governing the organization for investigations. And most companies tend to have whistleblowing policies or policies that will allow for investigations to occur that wouldn't necessarily put the entire organization into a tailspin. So I did share with them my own personal experience with dealing with a fraud case that involved $43 million in goods disappearing from the organization. And that investigation occurred without the whole company being aware that there was an investigation happening. And it was the outcome of that investigation that led to disciplinary action, which would lead us to the outcome perspective. Because if you do have, as in this case, any kind of activity that is occurring in your organization, you definitely wouldn't want someone as head of finance and head of HR continuing in the organization. And therefore the outcome would be some level of action, if it turns out to be true, taken against the two persons involved. So that was the essence. I don't know if Ritu would want to add to it, but we did look at it from a policy and perspective and procedure perspective, as well as outcomes.
All right, before we jump back to you, just for the interest of time, we would love for the feedback to be, Maxine, 1 minute, and then we're happy to, shift you and continue this conversation outside this event. All right, Maxine, what are your thoughts?
So Cavell is spot on, because she said the two operative words for me: whistleblowing and whistleblowing policy and evidence base. Because once the whistleblowing policy exists, you can pursue that without causing havoc in the organization. And like Cavell, I have had to deal with situations like that as a former HR executive. And once you have the evidence and the whistleblower policy is applied, then it can be dealt with, and the outcome will be as a result of the evidence that's provided via the investigation. So Cavell is spot on.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you so much, team two. All right, let's move on to the next group. And just again, for the interest of time, we'd love for you to keep your presentation to no more than a minute, and I will let you know when you are closing on. So room 3 is Pradeep, and we would like Dr. Preeti to evaluate the scenario. So Pradeep, your team is on for the presentation. Let's go.
Right, we had a very excellent, very good discussion. First point is our group's name is Swinging Private Limited, not Swindling Private Limited. But it is, if it is being converted into Swindling Private Limited, then there is a problem. Normally, it was felt that HR and finance cannot combine together to cook a dish. Normally, they are at the loggerheads, and it is a rare combination. And it is also a dangerous combination, because both departments are supposed to be conscious keeper of the company. And if they combine together and cook something in their own interest rather than company's interest, it is dangerous. But having said that, as let us not base our actions on the assumptions. So to assume means to make ass of you and me. So we felt that, let us not assume, let us find out the facts, and for that purpose, maybe best person is the CEO of the organization, and also the compliance head or audit head. So after bringing this fact to notice in the notice of the CEO, compliance should do a thorough investigations and find out that, really there is substance in this complaint or not. And if the complaint is found to be right, then appropriate action is to be taken. For swindling, people will have to go out of the organization. For other purpose, we can pardon them, but not for misappropriation of funds.
Great. Dr. Preeti, your response in a minute. Let's go.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Pradeep, for the in-depth analysis of the situation and giving a name for the team as well. So like the problem situation at hand has already said that you cannot have access to the departmental details. We do not have that data and that information. So very rightly said, when in that situation, like you rightly pointed out, there's a Tom and Jerry kind of a combination of HR and finance. So eventually, when they are also getting, shaking hands together and coming up with something that's going to be really, really fishy and quite risky and dangerous for the organization. So there you rightly pointed it out, and becomes very risky and dangerous for the whole organization. But now coming to the issue that, how do you investigate it? So like I'm okay with the idea of, because eventually top-down approach is something which we can take it up safely here. Because right now you do not have the data, you do not have the information. The assumption part has been taken up by the group one as well. And the outcome part also has been highlighted. So good that you're not assuming and you are taking it up. I would also, in that situation, I would not have kept it to myself, because if I am a loyal or committed employee of the organization, then it is my responsibility also that if I get an information which is not suiting the overall health of my organization, I need to report it. So whom to report it in such scenario? That happens to be the CEO, like you said, the compliance head or the audit head, whichever is applicable in the organization. So taking it up through the right channel, going top down would be ideal in such a scenario where you yourself cannot do much about it. So I'm in sync with your proposal. Thank you for the Swinging Private Limited, Mr. Pradeep. Thank you, Eza.
No, of course. I really liked your team name as well, Pradeep, and really great ideas, great feedback, Dr. Pradeep. Interest of time, room for Daphne, and this is going to be evaluated again by actually Dr. Preeti. So Daphne, you are presenting. Let's go.
There is another question for me, Eza? Okay.
Yes, it's again another group that we are gonna have you evaluate.
Okay.
It's our team, so the pressure is on. It's the Greek mafia. So I'm interested.
All right. I think in our group, so we had Daphne and Jacob. So I'll be leading the presentation. We actually didn't name the company, but when we looked at the situation, we realized that there's a lot of assumption and we don't really have clear-cut information. So first thing that we are going to do is do a cost analysis and understand if we take an immediate decision, what is the cost to the company, and if that sinks in and that aligns with us, we continue the conversation. And conversations are going to be, like you said, we are going to have a discussion with the leaders to try and understand what are some of the policies and why are we not able to track this, and if there is a possibility for people to do, let's say, financial misappropriation. There is clearly lack of tracking or lack of processes that has not been built, that is not enabling us to gather enough data point. And then and I think finally we also in some way, without taking a decision immediately, we are going to reinforce within the organization, conduct it could be trainings or it could be digital learning, where we reinforce what is use of company resources for company purposes versus what is personal usage, and reinforce it between the employees, so that we make sure everyone is on same page. And even if tomorrow, if we have to have a discussion, we know we've given information to everyone and it is crystal clear to everyone. So that's how we're going to look at it.
Okay, so thank you, Jason. I would, I'm partly in sync with what you said just now. The initial beginning, because, the question which has been given to us, the situation which has been given to us, here the question, you do not have the access, means we still have to understand what is this you. Am I the CEO? Am I the HR head? Am I the GM? What am I? So this question is being posed to who? If I as a simple employee, then the problem again stands the same, that we are talking about. The first half again emphasizes the problem that we do not have access to the information. We do not have that information. So how do we, I would want you to rethink over it, that how do you perform a cost benefit analysis? Like if I was just an employee, then what option do I have? So because I think Eza or Isha might be able to help us with that, because who's this you here, first of all? So if I am the CEO, because this little bit of ambiguity I felt in the question since long, I've been trying to point out, but okay, we've got good inputs here. So who's this you here? If this you is CEO or the head of the company or the person who can really take that charge and carry out that cost and plan, but then this becomes something slightly of a sidetrack thing. But the second part of the information, the answer which you presented is that, talking about the, the company resources, because eventually bottom line for any business remains the same. The money flow has to be there, the deliverables, the outputs, which you were talking in the previous groups also. It is important to keep focus on the outputs and the outcomes actually, because eventually the businesses are working for their long-term sustainability. So these kind of things creeping in and these kinds of issues coming up, and we don't have the information at hand. But then, yes, very rightly said, the company resources eventually belong to everyone equally. So it should not be a misappropriation or a disappropriation of anything to one person by maybe by, you know, I am myself a HR person, I should not say this, but by rightfully, if they think that everything belongs to them, maybe the HR or the finance, this should not be the case. But yes, through the way of maybe appropriate trainings, like you said, maybe through appropriate reinforcement mechanisms, maybe there is a system of core values, maybe there are those core value hoardings and boards, every nook and corner of the organization or the township and all and the industry. So they keep on reinforcing up to you that, you know, this is not ethical, you don't have to do it, you should not do it. And ethical training, again, like you mentioned, is very rightly said that time and again the company can, but why and how somebody will take up that ethical training, that remains still unquestioned. So somebody has to take the charge of informing the person higher up in the hierarchy. If you are not that you, so you have to take it up to the higher up. This is personally I feel. Then only that, you know, something called as training or reinforcement on core value training or workshops will come in. So yes, I partly agree, and it's not a disagreement here, but yes, I think we need to, probably the question I still feel was little ambiguous in some one term here. So yes, very nicely done. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Preeti. Thank you so much, Jason and the amazing Leak team for tackling this scenario head on. So in the interest of time, we're gonna wrap up right now. But before we do that, we would love for you to share your feedback using this NPS link, which our great Isha is gonna put into chat. And as she puts that into chat, I want to open the floor up to our mentors to say quick last words, and then we're going to wrap up. Okay, so maybe David, do you have anything as we wrap up?
Well, thank you. The thing I learned today is that it depends where you are, what the answers are. I'm certainly listening to Dr. Preeti just now. That is clearly a response based upon the culture from where she's brought up, from India. And it's different from what you might do in England, and it's different from what you might do in the USA. So if you're traveling around a lot, then you have to be very, very careful about assuming that a thing works a certain way when it probably doesn't. That's my comment.
I love that. I really like that, and having that cultural dexterity. What about you, Maxine? Any closing remarks?
Absolutely. And I go all the way back to the interview question, if you remember that question from Jane, where I shared in the smaller group that our technical skills get us to the door, but it's the soft skills that help us to solve problems, help us to, in many instances, do the job, and helps us to understand how to apply and how to learn about the culture as we navigate this global space. So I would like to invite people to, as we do everything that we do, we need to have that cultural perspective and that cultural sensitivity wherever we may be operating.
I really like that. And Dr. Preeti?
Thank you, Ezra, and thank you so much, David, for pointing it out very rightly for me. I think I was thinking of bringing this point up here because it's really that, in fact, so today morning I took a session where I was talking about the cultural context and the sensitivities. So yes, it really a lot depends upon our own upbringing and the places where we have worked upon, because I cannot match your experience. I mean, the kind of experience you are having, I'm yet to match that caliber and potential. Like I'm going to learn in some time. But then that reminds me of that question in the chat box, Ezra. If in a minute, if I can wind it up, this cultural change thing. So there's a question, no, which has been asked, that how do you inculcate that cultural change in an organization? So there's that cultural sensitivity we were talking about, right? That organization culture change. So that, according to me, coincidentally, I'm also, pursuing a PhD on organizational change management. So this topic, this question particularly becomes very close to my heart, and I'm going to just answer it up in 4 or 5 words. there are 5 elements to this. So my study so far has brought me to a model which revolves around 5 elements to that organizational cultural change aspect in an organization. That talks about firstly the leadership, there is a management support, there is an internal communication, they go hand in hand. And the 4th and the 5th thing, which we called as the mediating variables, are called as the training and development part, like we mentioned, we touched it up earlier as well as the employee involvement. So these 4 or 5 elements are bringing up and working up together to hand in hand to bring out that organizational change in the successful organizational change, which is acceptable and is it to be executed across the organization in a smooth manner. So yes, and my learning today, again, it's a good thing to have a lot of learning from people from across the globe sitting in different time zones, and wonderful learning here. Thank you so much all. Thank you for listening us out, and thank you for listening me out twice. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, Dr. Preeti. Before we wrap up and jump off, I want us all to get ready for the Gleek photo, the very famous Gleek photo. So I want you guys to indicate how you're feeling. This means you're feeling great and haven't had an energized learning lesson. This feels it was okay. And this feels could have been better. So when I say 3, we're gonna put our hands up and get ready for a picture. All right. 1, 2, 3.
I see a few couple of people offline. Daphne.
Yes.
If you want your cameras on, Abhi, Rajat, Neha, let's go.
Abhi, you're in the dark. There we go. We can see you.
There you go, Abhi.
Neha, we can see you. All right. Isha, we're ready.
Yes, I am. Yeah, done. Thank you so much.
Amazing. And if you enjoyed this session, again, we'd love your feedback on the NPS link that Isha left. And we also have another really, really, really exciting session that I'm so thrilled about. It's going to be on October 27th, around the same time slot. We'll send you a link to register soon. And it will be about knowing how to fund your startup. So whether you just have an idea for something big you want to create, or you're someone in Series A or B and you're looking for some global mentorship, this is going to be a really great opportunity for you to get to know some of like amazing investors, amazing serial entrepreneurs, share their ideas and their visions. And as always, we're going to send out a contact sheet. So if you found someone in the room you want to get to know better or connect with, you will have the opportunity and information to do so. So once again, a huge thank you from the Gleek team. It is always a pleasure to do these sessions. You give us so much energy and love to keep creating this content for you. And we really look forward to having more of you in more of these sessions. Thank you so much to our
Tell Asma I'll send her answer. I saw Asma, I'll send her answer directly to her.
Amazing.
No questions. Yeah.
Thank you, Maxine.
Amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank
you,
you.
everyone. Have a good day.
Answering the form, Isha. I
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Give us a moment.
Sure.
No worries. Take your time. Fill out the form. We're just going to be hanging out here. Isha, you can maybe play some music while people fill out the form.
Yeah.
I'll do the form.
I thank you so much, amazing coaches. I unfortunately have to run off for a medical appointment right now, but it was super great to have everyone. Thank you so much, Jacob, Daphne, Abhig, Neha, and Fanlola for joining. This was really great. All right, I will
take care.
see you soon. Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye. Thank you. Bye.